Hey, I'm Elisa Kreisinger, and every Saturday I unpack my strong opinions with the help of an expert who might not have all of the answers, but they certainly know more than I do. That's why this is Strong Opinions Loosely Held, and on this week's show, what's up with white women? This summer, my fellow white women and I became mockable memes, and we pretty much ruined summer. You might remember Pool Patrol Paula, a white lady who was arrested for assaulting a black teenager at a community pool.
Get out! Get out! Get out now!
And who could forget Barbecue Becky, a white lady who called the cops on a group of black people for barbecuing in a park.
Charcoal grills are not allowed here.
No, it's not actually. I just
Yeah,
looked at the
it
map.
is.
It says this is a designated barbecue area.
No.
And then there was Permit Patty, the white lady cannabis entrepreneur who called the police because an enterprising 8-year-old girl was selling bottles of water on the sidewalk without a permit.
She calling police on an 8-year-old little girl.
Yeah, and illegally selling water without a permit.
And those are just the instances that made national news. What is going on with white women? And how are we going to avoid ruining our favorite season, fall? Dr. Brittney Cooper is an associate professor of women and gender studies at Rutgers University, and she's also the author of Eloquent Rage. Her memoir really helped me put this summer into perspective.
I absolutely think that white women have something to learn by observing people of color and observing women of color doing feminism and caring for each other. Like whenever I say this thing about white women, come get your people.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time I say it, white women are like, but who, Permit Patty is not my person. Like she doesn't, I'm like, yes she is though.
Yeah.
That is your person. Like she's your people. But the thing that the rest of us have had to learn, that white women and particularly white feminists still have to learn, is that none of us can flourish beyond the capacity of our communities to flourish. Being in community with homegirls means that you understand that you're only sustained in community, that it is not I think therefore I am, but I am because we are. There is nothing more powerful than that.
Dr. Cooper explained that communities of color have always been grouped together because of prejudice. But white women, on the other hand, we've never really had to find community with each other to survive because, well, we're white.
So because the rest of us, because of racial dynamics in America, are group identified, we have to be, when folks who are of Middle Eastern descent become grouped together because of the politics of like terrorism and 9/11, right? The same thing happens to black folks. The same thing happens to many groups of Latino folks. White people don't understand that. They're always like, nope, I'm just individually myself. And I want to be judged on my individual merits and my goodness as a person.
And that explains why white women are a major eye roll. But it also brings up a very interesting question, which is, why don't white people group identify?
Because look, here's the truth of that. White people have the power they have because of white supremacy, because of moving in a group to secure privileges and advantages and benefits for themselves as a group. And so all I'm asking for is acknowledgement of that. It is what is true. And then a shift towards using those group identifications in a just way.
Dr. Cooper told me that the challenge is going to be that white people will have to have some uncomfortable conversations with the Permit Patty and Barbecue Beckys in their lives. But the benefit of that is that we'll get to be in community. But why is this idea of community such a weird and kind of radical idea for white women? Dr. Cooper explained that a lack of community has a lot to do with proximity to power. White women are closer to white men and therefore white privilege, and that privilege really skews our sense of injustice.
Their only sense of injustice is that they grow up next to men and they want to be able to run shit in the boardroom, in the home, and with money. What white women and black men have in common is that many times their vision of freedom is having the level of freedom and power that white men have, because both of them have proximity. White women live in the house with white men, are raised with white men, raise white men. Black men are men. And so they are looking at white men and saying, we could rule the world the way that you do. Black women and women of color negotiate that real differently.
Because women of color don't have the benefit of being either white or male, they have a very different perspective of the world.
Because we don't have either the benefit of race or gender to give us that level of proximity. And so we're like, well, this whole thing is rigged.
Yeah.
We can't get there no matter how we try. We know that you can't dismantle the patriarchy if you're not also trying to dismantle white supremacy.
So to recap, white women need to have conversations with the Barbecue Beckys, Pool Patrol Paulas, and Permit Patties in our lives. Because for white women, those are our people. But for white women, we also feel kind of awkward about this because we've never really had to be in community with other white women to survive. And that's because we're white and we've done everything we can to hold on to this privilege. And that includes calling the cops on people of color for being in public.
Look, white women have always been complicit in the work of white supremacy. They have often been some of its primary arbiters. I think that many black feminists don't have as benevolent a read of white feminist women because white feminist women have a long history of doing racist shit.
Dr. Cooper and I just barely scratched the surface of this topic, so make sure you check out her book, Eloquent Rage. And are you having these conversations with the white women in your life? What about with the women of color? I'd love to hear from you. Comment below, and I'll see you back here next week. We hope you enjoyed this episode. To watch more videos on Riot, click here, and to subscribe, click here.